Hi everyone, good evening, and thanks for joining the webinar this evening, all about plant-based diets and omega-3. If you're new here or whether you're a regular member, please use the chat function to say hello, introduce yourself, what you do, where you're dialing in from today so that we can all connect. There's a chat box at the bottom of the screen. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Rahini Bajekal. I'm a nutritionist and also communications lead at Plant-Based Health Professionals UK. And it gives me great pleasure to announce that we're going to have this webinar on plant-based diets and omega-3s with Elena Holmes. But before I introduce her properly, I also want to make a quick announcement about some upcoming webinars that we have before we take a break over the summer. So we're going to be joined at the end of May by Dr. Tila Kansagra, who's a board-certified lifestyle medicine physician and a GP with a special interest and extended role in chronic fatigue syndrome. And she's going to be discussing chronic fatigue and plant-based diets. So if you suffer from fatigue, if your patients suffer from fatigue for a variety of different reasons, this is going to be a fantastic webinar, which is going to dive into a bit more detail into the nutrients that are found in plant-based diets, which may alleviate some of the symptoms. So do join for that. The details are up on our website under pbhp.uk/webinars. And we're also going to be having a webinar on plants for joints with Wendy and Carlin. So this is really helpful for anyone suffering from arthritis or supporting patients and with joint health. And we also have a webinar at the start of June called The Plant-Based Athlete with Anita Bean as well. So that's going to be a great one. And they're all up on our website. And again, free to join, CPD accredited, CME accredited. So our webinars would not be possible without the support of veganfitness.com, who kindly lend us their Zoom platform, the British Society of Lifestyle Medicine, who provide us with CPD accreditation, and the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, who provide us with CME accreditation. Plant-Based Health Professionals UK is a community interest group dedicated to promoting a sustainable and healthy whole food plant-based diet for the prevention, management and treatment of common chronic diseases like cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. And lastly, a reminder to consider supporting our work. If you enjoy our webinars, do consider joining us as a member if you haven't already, or visit pbhp.uk and subscribe to our free weekly newsletters. Consider donating and at the price of a coffee if you enjoyed this webinar, and follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter where we're active. So now with great pleasure, I'd like to welcome Elena Holmes. Elena is a registered nutritionist. She regularly delivers educational workshops, talks, seminars for groups, and she actually wrote her dissertation all about the conversion of DHA into EPA and all about omega-3s. So she is incredibly well placed to talk about this subject. And she's also been a member of PBHP UK from the very beginning in 2018. So she's a long-standing member, and we're going to have a fantastic discussion today. And do join us for the live Q&A afterwards with Elena. And at any point, if you've got a question, pop it in the Q&A box, not the chat box, the Q&A box, so that I can ask your question to Elena. So yeah, best of luck, Elena, and see you soon.
Hello, everyone. So yes, and hello and thank you for joining me for this webinar. So yes, I'm Elena Holmes, a registered nutritionist and a member of Plant-Based Health Professionals UK. I have been eating an exclusively plant-based diet for a couple of decades, and I was a lacto-ovo vegetarian for over a decade before that. First of all, a little apology. I will be reading, because if I didn't stuck to what I wrote, if I wasn't strict with myself, it would be 11 p.m. and I would still be on a second or third slide. So just for time. So why did I choose omega-3s in plant-based diets as a topic for today's webinar? Just start screen sharing, and that should, yes. So we all know and joke where vegans get their protein. We know about the importance of B12 for vegans, and not only them. We also know that iron deficiency is a global issue and not limited to vegans or vegetarians. Conversely, with growing awareness and interest in omega-3 fatty acids and their effects on our health, plus the increasing number of people following exclusively or predominantly plant-based diets, there's more and more speculation about the potential deficiencies and therefore effects on health in those who do not eat fish or shellfish. I have not eaten fish or shellfish since I was 14, and I'm fascinated by nutrition research and science and its application in clinical practice. And this led me to my, I believe, lifelong interest in omega-3s, besides becoming the subject of my dissertation, as Rohini mentioned. Hence, plant-based diets and omega-3s. Today we will first look at omega-3 fatty acid metabolism and functions in the body, because this explains both their importance and potential recommendations. Then we will review the current evidence on omega-3 status in vegans. And then I present the recommendations that we can draw from the current available evidence. Omega-3s is an umbrella term for three main fatty acids: alpha-linolenic acid, found in plants, eicosapentaenoic acid, EPA, and docosahexaenoic acid, DHA. I will refer to them only as EPA and DHA to save time as well. So, preformed EPA and DHA, also called long-chain polyunsaturated fatty acids, are found mainly in fish, shellfish, and some algae. Alpha-linolenic acid, as well as omega-6 linoleic acid, is also called an essential fatty acid. Essential because our body cannot make them de novo, and we must get them from food. EPA and DHA are sometimes called conditionally essential fatty acids, and much more about this will be later. I promise there will be only a couple of heavily biochemical slides in this presentation. Here we see the molecules of these three fatty acids. Alpha-linolenic acid has 18 carbon atoms with 3 double bonds. Double bonds are where there is no hydrogen atom attached to the carbon atom. EPA has 20 carbon atoms, 5 double bonds. DHA has 22 carbon atoms and 6 double bonds. That is why EPA and DHA are also called long chain, so a chain of carbon atoms, that is, fatty acids. And they are also called omega-3s because the first double bond, that is, the place on the carbon chain with no hydrogen atom attached, is on the third carbon atom in the chain, or as in this diagram, third from the end, depending on which end we start counting. The place of the first double bond, the number of double bonds, and the length of the carbon chain determines how that fatty acid molecule behaves in the body. 2 slides ago, I mentioned that EPA and DHA are called conditionally essential fatty acids. Our body can synthesize them from alpha-linolenic acid, and the process is called conversion or fatty acid cascade. But there are many caveats with this process, hence conditionally essential. In the body, dietary alpha-linolenic acid is converted to EPA and then to DHA with the help of certain enzymes called desaturase and elongase, as well as other cofactors such as dietary magnesium, calcium, zinc, some B vitamins, and so on. Desaturases remove the hydrogen atom, elongases, as it says on the box, lengthen the carbon chain by adding carbon atoms. Other factors, so-called down regulators, make this process less efficient. For example, saturated fatty acids, trans fats, alcohol, certain health conditions, such as diabetes or metabolic syndrome. The other essential fatty acid, linoleic acid, omega-6, competes with alpha-linolenic acid for the same enzymes for the synthesis of longer chain omega-6s, such as gamma-linolenic acid and arachidonic acid. This, as we will see in a second, is quite a crucial thing. As we've just seen, humans can convert ALA to EPA and DHA, but with a considerable degree of variation. We convert from 5 to 15, 16, some sources state 20% of dietary alpha-linolenic acid to EPA. And at the very, very best, only 1% or less, usually, of dietary alpha-linolenic acid to DHA. The conversion is affected by dietary factors, by, first of all, the ratio between dietary linoleic, omega-6 acid and alpha-linolenic acid. Because, as we saw in the previous slide, because of the competition for same enzymes. The more linoleic omega-6 we get, the less alpha-linolenic we convert into EPA and DHA. Already mentioned dietary cofactors or upregulators facilitate the conversion. Down regulators, such as saturated fats, trans fats, high dietary EPA and DHA intake. Because why convert if we get the ready-made stuff? And also, for example, alcohol, they reduce the process, slow down the process, make the cascade less efficient. Genetics and ethnicity also affect the conversion because the conversion is also regulated by certain genes called FAD1, FAD2, and FAD3. Certain mutations in those genes make us better converters, and vice versa. This is not just on an individual level, but on the populational level as well. Ethnic groups from places where preformed EPA and DHA make part of a daily diet, such as Inuits, for example, have a certain mutation if their FAD genes, which makes them quite inefficient in converting ALA to EPA, DHA. On the other hand, populations that do not get or get very small amount of preformed EPA and DHA from their diet, and their main dietary source of omega-3s is alpha-linolenic acid from plant foods. South Asians, for example, their FAD genes help them to be much, much more efficient in that fatty acid cascade, make them better converters. Sex, premenopausal women convert more efficiently because of the function of estrogen. Age, the older we get, the less efficient we are at the cascade, because as other functions where enzymes are involved. That enzyme functions slows down with age. As mentioned, certain health conditions such as type 2 diabetes or metabolic syndrome make us less efficient to convert, whereas pregnancy, for example, facilitates the conversion. And there's also slowly but steadily increasing body of research that suggests that microbiota or microbiome, all those microorganisms that reside in our gut, could also have some effect on how efficient or inefficient we are with a fatty acid cascade. But at the moment, there are no conclusive results. These are just a few of the functions of EPA and DHA. They are anti-inflammatory. They are precursors for certain molecules produced by our body when we need to reduce or eliminate inflammation. They help to prevent cardiovascular disease and neurodegenerative disease because they regulate certain gene expressions, because they are responsible for cell membrane integrity, and also through their anti-inflammatory function. The evidence about their participation in prevention of certain cancers is mixed, but still points towards their potentially preventive effects. Again, mainly probably because of the anti-inflammatory function. They, particularly DHA, are crucial for brain health and brain development because of their effects on cell integrity, the conduction of nervous impulses, effects on blood circulation, and through many other pathways. The retina in the eye has a massive DHA concentration, and DHA is paramount for eye health. For example, studies show that people who have age-related macular degeneration tend to have low body levels of DHA. Pre- and postnatal development, well, with this sort of comprises all the previous points: heart health, brain health, and development, gene expression, and so on. Mental health disorders such as depression or anxiety are gaining more and more attention from healthcare professionals, and quite rightly so. Studies show the inverse correlation between seafood intake and the incidence of depression and anxiety. However, as so often happens with nutrition research, is it the measured nutrient or is it the confounders? Well, think about Mediterranean sea, sun, warm weather, palm trees, plenty of movement, nice socializing. That's quite a good antidepressant concoction, isn't it? However, the properties of EPA-DHA, so anti-inflammatory, plus them being precursors to endocannabinoids, which are molecules involved in mood regulation, also supporting cell integrity, do suggest that besides other lifestyle factors, they likely play a role in the depression and anxiety prevention. Plus, there are studies suggesting that patients with low body EPA-DHA levels are less responsive to treatment with antidepressant drugs. However, very mixed and conflicting evidence, both in vegans and non-vegans. Definitely much more research is required. And that's how sort of recommendations from main health bodies look. So practically, eat oily fish to get your 450-500 milligrams a day of EPA and DHA. ISFAL is International Society for Fatty Acid and Lipid Research. So, and other major health organizations such as American Heart Association and so on and so on. So all the recommendations are very similar. Practically, we need long-chain omega-3 fatty acids for health, especially for prevention of heart disease. That's where the main body of evidence lies. Looking at the evidence, one cannot avoid noticing the mention of omega-3 index. Omega-3 index is the percentage of EPA-DHA within total fat content in red blood cell membranes. Numerous studies on EPA and DHA health effects, not only heart, but also brain or neurological health and other inflammatory conditions, use omega-3 index of 8% as the lowest recommended value. That is, the value below which we have omega-3 deficiency or omega-3 suboptimal levels with all the negative consequences. And, well, being very curious, I started to try and dig out where this 8% comes from. I found that it comes from Harris et al. Study from 2004, which focused exclusively on omega-3 role in prevention of coronary heart disease. So that's what. So their study practically said that an omega-3 index of 8% or more was associated with the greatest cardioprotection, whereas an index of 4% or less was associated with the least. So a humongous question is, can we or should we generalize this number, 8%, as something to aim for to prevent other conditions besides coronary heart disease? So that's food for thought. Time to focus on vegans. These are just two examples of the conclusions from the studies, but they are very much in line with the results from the majority of other studies that focus on omega-3 status in vegans. So, practically, with the exception of omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acids, a vegan diet is associated with a more favorable dietary fat intake and more favorable plasma fatty acid profiles, and therefore may reduce cardiovascular risk. Or, for example, between group differences in whole blood fatty acid concentrations were observed. Omega-3 index in both groups were suboptimal in terms of cardiac risk. So yes, so practically damned if you do, damned if you don't. Vegan, not vegan, but usually omega-3 tends to be quite low in everyone. Oh, that's curious. Oh, okay. Considering the importance of EPA and DHA for pre- and post-natal development, I also wanted to stop briefly on the studies focusing on breast milk omega-3 levels in vegans. And here the things get quite interesting. Most of such studies conclude something like breast milk from vegans had significantly higher unsaturated fat and total omega-3 fats. Docosahexaenoic acid concentrations in breast milk were low, regardless of maternal diet pattern. So similar as the study quoted in the previous slide. Or, for example, in conclusion, the vegan's milk was shown to be different from the donor's milk, mainly due to its low DHA content, which is concerning. So this study suggests that it's just the vegans that have low DHA concentration in their milk, breast milk. But one study found that the expression of a FAD1 gene, which is responsible for ALA to EPA DHA conversion efficiency, increases during pregnancy. So an increase in one expression during pregnancy in vegetarian pregnant women that may have contributed to the maintenance of arachidonic acid, eicosapentaenoic acid, and DHA levels, thereby ensuring that the overall long-chain polyunsaturated fatty acid levels of the neonate is not compromised. However, this research focused on South Asians who, as we saw in slide 6, are better converters genetically. So we should not extrapolate its results to people of other ethnicities. Let us leave for a second omega-3s and think about whole foods, plant-based diets, or healthy vegan diets. Massive and consistently increasing body of evidence suggests that these diets protect our heart and blood vessel health. They are anti-inflammatory. They provide plenty of nutrients for brain and eye health, such as carotenoids, vitamin E, iron, alpha-linolenic acid and linoleic acid, various phytonutrients, and so on. As mentioned before, the results from the studies on the effects of plant-based diets on mental health differ radically. Also because plant-based diets differ a lot between themselves. But what we see is that where effects on health are concerned, there is a considerable overlap between EPA and DHA and whole foods, plant-based diets. There's also an increasing number of studies that focus on alpha-linolenic acid specifically, the plant-based omega-3. And what those studies suggest is that alpha-linolenic acid is not just a substrate for its long-chain derivatives, but it in itself has protective effects against type 2 diabetes, heart disease, liver disease, and some cancers. That one study, which you can see, also mentions bone fractures, but since that study looked at the correlation of the intake of flax seeds and flaxseed oil and bone health, my very own speculation is that it was more lignans, so phytoestrogens in flax seeds that contributed to better bone health. But that's just my thought, maybe both lignans and alpha-linolenic acid. So, what should we eat? If our only dietary omega-3 is alpha-linolenic acid, we should aim for 16 to 20 grams of alpha-linolenic acid per day. In case you wondered, because normally the recommendations say 2 grams of alpha-linolenic acid daily. These recommendations are for people who eat seafood or fish and get their preformed EPA and DHA. So 16 to 20 grams of AL a day, which equals to 2 heaped tablespoons, it should say, my apologies, ground flaxseed, or 1 tablespoon of flaxseed oil and 60 grams of walnuts, or sort of pick and mix of all the, so you can see the table with sort of the sources, most concentrated sources of alpha-linolenic acid. And also I should add Nordic berries, such as lingonberries, also have sort of a decent amount of alpha-linolenic acid. Also, since we need cofactors for the fatty acid cascade, so magnesium, zinc, B group vitamins, nuts, seeds, whole grains, legumes, green leafy vegetables. So all the components of whole foods, plant-based diet. And we should avoid or minimize concentrated omega-6 sources such as soya, sunflower, or peanut oil, and highly processed foods because of the competition for the enzymes between omega-6 and omega-3s, but also, well, these foods are not healthy, full stop. Just a few examples of how to incorporate those ALA containing foods in the diet, so sprinkling porridge with chia or ground flax seeds or walnut pieces, chia pudding. So yeah, practically sprinkling ground flax seeds or hemp seeds as well onto everything where you can sprinkle them on, or adding them to bakes, for example, snacking on walnuts. So all very nice, delicious and pleasurable activities to increase our ALA consumption. To supplement or not, this is a quote from a review paper by Team Shazai, Dean Aisha and Alexander Shazai, a family of very highly esteemed and high-ranking neuroscientists who are also promoters of whole foods, plant-based diet for prevention of neurodegenerative diseases. So in short, what's the conclusion say? Certain population groups are likely to benefit from EPA-DHA supplementation, but more research is needed. Therefore, considering all the factors affecting the conversion, all the individual differences in the capacity to convert, considering the importance of long-chain omega-3s to our health, and taking into account the expert opinion, the verdict would be, it depends. It depends on health status, age, sex, diet, and so on. Said this, for certain groups, and we are talking about those who do not get preformed EPA-DHA from diet, those trying to conceive, pregnant, or breastfeeding, and also for infants, algae-based EPA-DHA supplementation is recommended. And the elderly and those suffering from inflammatory or neurological conditions might also benefit from EPA-DHA algae supplements. In other words, do as fish do. Now a little stop, because some people still believe that fish, they somehow synthesize those long-chain omega fatty acids. Actually, fish are a secondary or even more often a tertiary source of EPA-DHA. Fish get their EPA-DHA either directly from microalgae that contain EPA-DHA or by eating microplankton, so microcrustaceans that feed on algae. So yes, let's do as fish do, get our EPA-DHA from the primary source. And for algae-based EPA-DHA supplements, not only for children, check Plant-Based Health Professional UK website, and there are some excellent, brilliant resources. Summarizing, eat a whole foods, plant-based diet with some good ALA sources. Avoid ultra-processed foods, and concentrated linoleic acid sources, such as seed oils. If in doubt, speak to a nutritional professionals. Always a good idea. And finally, two last quotes from two major organizations in the UK that promote healthy vegan diets. Plant-based health professionals UK, fish consumption is not necessary if you are eating a healthy plant-based diet composed of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds. An algae-based DHA-EPA supplement is essential for pregnancy and breastfeeding for those avoiding fish consumption. It may be advisable for older adults to also take a DHA-EPA supplement. The Vegan Society, supplementation with long-chain omega-3 fats from microalgae may be a particularly important consideration for infants and those who are pregnant or breastfeeding, due to the role of omega-3 fats in brain health. Please discuss the use of supplements with a health professional. Thank you very much. So it's time for questions. And yeah, so that's how you and where you can find me. And just a tiny little number of the references, because there are literally hundreds of them on omega-3s versus our health. So thanks very much. And
that was fantastic, Elena. Such a complex and scientific topic, really broken down with the science and the key questions, as well as a lot of practical takeaways for people listening who want to know how to get, these sources into the diet. Before we start with a bit of Q&A, I'd love if you could just share a little bit more about how you became plant-based, how you transitioned your diet, maybe how you get your ALAs as well, because I think that would be interesting for everyone listening.
Oh, yes. Oh, gosh. No, it was so many years ago. Anyway, I was 14. I was very much into animals since I was tiny. And also I spent plenty of time at my grandmother's and seeing sort of animals being bred and communicating with animals. I really loved meat, but I started having quite a strong cognitive dissonances. I love those pigs. I talk to them. I bring them nice herbs to eat. And then sort of I eat them. So something was all right. So yeah, so I became lacto-ovo-vegetarian when I was 14. But then the more I knew about health effects and the more I knew about dairy industry, so it took me over a decade, but finally I became a sort of vegan first for animals. Also because, gosh, milk industry is a massive brainwashing machine, to be honest. Also because milk is important for bone health and so on and so on. So yeah, so I became vegan. My sort of diet quality still needed some tweaks because I loved sugary stuff and different sort of not terribly healthy things. But again, then the healthier I ate, the more I noticed how healthy eating affects my health, and the less I craved all the unhealthy stuff. So my past is BSc in psychology, a few years being a professional musician, but that's another chapter. But finally, being completely passionate about nutrition and seeing what healthy nutrition does to us, I did my MSc in nutrition, clinical nutrition, and yeah, the rest is history. And as to the last question, I am taking algae-based EPA and DHA for, well, my brain sometimes fails me, but usually I quite like my brain. So, and yeah, so I think it's better to, I mean, there's nothing to lose. And if EPA and DHA help to prevent any issues, any neurological disease and so on. So that's one reason. Another reason is that there's a strong genetic component in age-related macular degeneration, and someone very close in my family has it, and it's not a nice thing. So again, nothing to lose. I'm taking the supplement also to reduce the likelihood of age-related macular degeneration happening. So, or at least postpone it as much as possible.
That's really helpful. And how do you get your ALA sources?
ALA sources. I sometimes eat linseeds. I am addicted to walnuts. So yes, I eat a handful of walnuts daily. So yes, linseeds not that consistently. I eat loads of dark leafy greens for many other health reasons, and also because I love everything that's green and leafy. I will eat it.
Brilliant.
So, yes.
Brilliant. There's a lot of questions. So let's dive right in with some of the other ones. So there's a good one that just came up. Does it really matter if you consistently use the same source of ALA? So say if you only use flax seeds every day or only use walnuts, or is it best to vary the source?
I don't think it matters for ALA, but obviously different foods that contain ALA, they have many other different nutrients and different types of fiber. So again, the diversity is the key. So like, for example, walnuts, they have certain phytochemicals, certain fibers that are particularly good for our gut bacteria. Linseeds, flax seeds, they have lignans, so phytoestrogens that again help our hormonal health and bone health as well. So yeah, so variety matters, but yeah, as I said, where ALA is concerned,
do what works for you. Obviously, flax seeds tend to be the cheapest. If you're, especially if you're like grinding them at home, I would store them in the fridge or the freezer, particularly if you're not using them straight away, because those delicate seeds that can, the oils can be prone to rancidity. But I also make a mix. So I blend up a mixture of flax, chia, walnuts, and put that on in smoothies or in dal or in porridge or whatever. So that can be a good thing to do. And then there's a great question from Louise, which is, do you reduce the nutritional content of flax or chia by heating them up, such as baking them or cooking with them?
Oh, an excellent question. Generally, those long chain PUFAs and ALA, they are quite prone to oxidation. And if you use flaxseed oil, I would definitely not heat it. I would use it cold on bread or salads. However, I saw some research that if you, for example, make bread with ground linseeds, they still maintain most of the properties. And this is because this is not oil, this is ALA in its food matrix. So proteins in the seeds, fiber in the seeds, and so that food matrix, it is probably helping to maintain the sort of nutritional properties. So again, whatever works for you, whatever is feasible. But yes, I've seen research that nutritional properties of ALA in bread are still there. Maybe not 100%, 80% or something. So
that's exactly the same study I saw. I think, or there's been a few different studies. It was on muffins, and it was looking at ground flax and how much ALA they contained afterwards, and they're very much still there. So it's probably a very minor degradation. And I would say that it's a great thing to use in baking and cooking, because obviously it's a great binder for burgers, for patties, for falafel, for baking. So muffins, breads, cakes, cookies. Obviously you can make more wholesome, whole food, plant-based ones with applesauce, dates, bananas, chia, flax. So yeah, definitely don't be afraid. I prefer to add it in at the end when I cook porridge because it just gets really gloopy otherwise, but other
Yes.
people feel differently. So yeah, that's a good one. And then there was a question about chia seeds. Do they need to be ground the same way that flax seeds or linseeds do, or are they different?
Well, it looks like chia seeds. It's easier, sort of, they're much easier broken down in the intestine. So even if we use them not ground, but whole, we will still get the benefits because they will be broken down in the intestine. Whereas flax seeds, whole flax seeds are a fantastic remedy for constipation, exactly because they become very sort of gloopy and they just flow through the colon. So yeah, but being as they are not broken down. So we need to grind flax seeds. But from what I know, it's chia seeds. We will get the benefits from whole chia seeds. And obviously, if they are, especially if they are soaked overnight, like making chia seed porridge or chia seed pudding, so-called. So again, that soaking also makes them much more easier to break down and digest and absorb the nutrients.
That's what I came across as well. And then there's a question here about what is classed as an older person. In the webinar, you mentioned that, you know, conversion rates can decrease as we get older. What do you classify as an older person?
Well, usually the studies that mention older people classify everyone over 65. So again, that's, of course, we know that the chronological age does not mean biological age, but that's what studies start classifying as old. I mean, in some cases, old is everyone over 50, like for some digestive issues and so on. So again, yeah, it's a bit fluid as a definition, but usually, yes.
And I guess if you have other comorbidities or other conditions like maybe celiac disease, or you're on things like metformin or the birth control pill, that could impact things. We just don't know how. I mean, it can impact other things. So we just don't know. We don't have that research there. But I guess yeah, that's an interesting point. And again, a question about, you know, peri and postmenopausal women taking supplements. Are there any studies showing benefits for that particular group? And is, you know, can it help with any of the symptoms experienced during the perimenopause and menopause?
Oh, an excellent question. And actually, even yesterday or this morning, I saw another study. Yes, omega-3 and long-chain omega-3s seem to help both with menopausal symptoms, perimenopausal symptoms, and also like premenstrual syndrome, because they are inflammatory. So they have that strong anti-inflammatory effect. And sometimes all that havoc in hormones that happens within those stages of life. So has also a huge inflammatory component. So yes, I think they could be something that could hugely improve life of some people who go through certain stages.
And on the other side of the spectrum, a question from pediatric dietitian Paula Hallam. Up until what age do you recommend a DHA supplement for children 2 years of age? I actually pasted in the link from PBHP UK and what our pediatrician Miriam recommends, which is supplementing up until the age of 2, and that there's no real evidence for supplementing after that, but people do choose sometimes to do it for the possible benefits for brain health and other things. But do you have any differing view to that, Elena, or would you be in agreement?
What I saw the recommendations, that is also from, for example, Italian vegan pediatricians. So yes, it's 2 years of age, but again, it's very much above that age. It very much depends on the diet of the child, because some children, as parents will know, are extremely picky eaters. So again, and some children, they don't like the texture, for example, of those gloopy linseeds, or don't like walnuts, or have a nut allergy. So it very much depends if they can get ALA, if you can sort of add natural ALA sources into the diet or not, because some people, some children could benefit. Also, another interesting thing, but that's a big chapter. There are quite a few studies on children having, for example, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And the research suggests that for children with this condition, long chain omega-3, so EPA and DHA supplementation could be beneficial. Especially, I think they do quite a bit of research in Australia, research of this kind of, on these conditions.
So a very important question that also came up was about soya, and I thought we should tackle it before anyone has to leave and do something else. So two questions about it. When you said to avoid soya, were you talking about soya or soybean oil? And someone said, yeah, I knew exactly what you were going to say.
Definitely, as well. I tried, yeah, maybe I should have rephrased it. Yeah, definitely soybean oil, because when we get soya, obviously we get all the protein, phytonutrients, isoflavones, loads of other good stuff. Soybean oil, it's practically a concentrate of omega-6, a bit of omega-3 as well, but mainly omega-6. So yeah, it seemed like eating fruit or drinking fruit juice. There's an abysmal difference between the two. Same with soya, same with sunflower. Sunflower seeds are fantastic. Sunflower seed oil is something to sort of not to abuse, not use too often.
So someone who's another person who increased their soya and tofu intake for hormone and calcium intake, especially using calcium set tofus, and so you think that's a good choice, basically.
Yes, because then you have then you get linoleic acid in a naturally occurring amount. And mind you, it might have sounded like linoleic acid is something evil that steals enzymes, but actually we need quite a bit of linoleic acid for, again, eye health, brain health, heart health, inflammation regulation, and also skin health. Very much so. But when we get them from whole foods, we get exactly the right amount, the right proportions. So yeah, so that's the difference. Oils are oils, whole foods are whole foods.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, I totally could not agree. We're very, very passionate about soya at PBHP as well. I'm just going to post the link to our soya fact sheet so that everyone who wants to see more research or, understand soya a bit more, because there were several questions. There was also a brilliant podcast on the Proof podcast this week with Dr. Mark Messina. Did you listen to it as well? It was fascinating. Yeah, with the latest research on soya, it's really worth it. I'll find the link in a second. So another question which was there was, should someone with cancer be supplementing omega-3, and is it okay for them to supplement? I imagine this is a bit difficult to answer, just without knowing the person, but do you have any thoughts on that, Elena?
Well, first of all, any supplementation, if one has cancer, any supplementation should be discussed with a treating oncologist because of the interaction with other medications and stuff. So yeah, it is a tricky question. It very much also depends if someone with cancer eats exclusively plant-based diet or not, what other foods they eat, what other, as we saw, we need cofactors. So what other cofactors they eat, because cancer also affects appetite, affects the absorption of nutrients. So yes, there's no blanket answer there. One should look individually and see what's going on and if it's necessary and if it's safe. First and foremost, if it's safe to supplement.
Yeah, and how much EPA and DLA should we be taking? It seems to really vary regarding the brand of supplement. So that's something that, people have wanted to know in the questions.
So the general recommendation is 450, or some state 400 to 500 milligrams of combined EPA and DHA a day. So yeah, and most of the supplements have more or less those quantities. So again, the rest also depends. If one eats 2 handfuls of walnuts every day and uses linseed, flaxseed oil on their salads, they might need a bit less. So again, but the daily recommended dose is 450, 500 milligrams a day.
Yeah, we recommend at least 500 milligrams for anyone who's, especially like pregnant, breastfeeding, so on. We were discussing before as well that South Asians seem to be particularly good converters of DHA into EPA. So I was thrilled about that, because often we get the short straw when it comes to some other areas like cardiovascular disease and so on. So good to know that there's a possible benefit. I think there was a study that was done that Dr. David Katz, I think I read it in his blog and picked up the study. What about the tests you get all these tests. I've seen so many tests in the USA, in the UK popping up, blood tests claiming to be able to measure omega-3 levels. What are your thoughts on those? Should vegans be doing those tests? Should plant-based eaters be doing those tests? They can be quite expensive, from what I've noticed.
Strictly speaking, we still don't know, or we still cannot say with confidence that lower blood levels or tissue levels of EPA, DHA in vegans translate into worse health. So, and as with any test, well, if you're really curious, so you could do the test, but what will you do with the results of the test? So again, it's a bit individual. And I mean, yes, some tests are quite reliable, and they usually state that infamous 8%. So, I mean, yes, if one has a condition that one suspects could be caused by low omega-3s in their body, so it might be worth just to see where they are. But again, so sometimes I think it's cheaper, because those tests, they are not on the NHS. They are usually by private laboratories.
Yeah, there's not enough research behind them yet. I agree with you.
So yeah, so it's a bit, I mean, some people are happier when they have test results on the paper and they know where they stand. But yes, I would not recommend them.
I've never done one. I don't plan. There's more evidence. I'd keep eating, spend the money on a year's supply of flaxseed. And just a couple of final questions. I know we're running out of time. Is seaweed a source of EPA, DHA?
Not every seaweed, because seaweed that contains EPA, DHA, they are usually microalgae. So one cell plants, one cell algae that are not used for human consumption, but they are used for making supplements, as well as they serve as food for crustaceans and fish. Some seaweed have some of EPA, DHA, but negligible amounts. So practically seaweed like nori, wakame, kombu that are used for human nutrition, no, they don't have. If they have, it's a negligible amount. So I would not rely on dietary seaweed for EPA, DHA.
And then a question on, is there any reason not to supplement just in case? I would say cost is the main thing. Would you sort of say that's the main thing, the main barrier? Because these supplements can be quite expensive. I usually wait until there's a deal on or something, but even then, they're not cheap. They're not cheap compared to B12 or vitamin D or things like that.
Yes, exactly, because, well, they are not that easy to make, and so, or not yet, at least. But yes, I could not agree more with you, Rohini. It's the cost, but otherwise, no. If you can afford, it's worth it. So,
And if you don't like the taste of it, because it can be quite fishy in a liquid dropper, then go for the capsule.
yes, yes, absolutely, yes, yeah. And don't bite into capsule because, oh dear, no.
Oh, it's not going to be nice. And then
No.
I just have to ask this one question because I thought it was really good. So you mentioned that the body converts omega-3 better in some cases if you don't have too much of it. Therefore, doesn't this suggest that supplementing could be actually reducing the body's ability to convert?
Yes, that would be the logical conclusion. But if we are supplementing, so we do not need to worry that much about the conversion because we are getting preformed EPA, DHA. We should still eat linseeds or walnuts or chia seeds for all the other nutrients that they have. So yes, or sometimes, yes, if one is supplementing but might suspect that this is not getting enough from the supplement. So again, so I think, yeah, again, it's not an issue.
Yeah, I agree with you. And these ALA sources, as you already said, they're packed with fiber, polyphenols, so many other nutrients like magnesium and calcium and all these other micronutrients that we need for good health. And also, some protein as well. I think there's about 4 grams per tablespoon of ground flax. So
Yes, yes.
yeah, it's a pretty significant amount when you've added a couple of things in, and also great for skin and hair and the joint health and everything. So I think it's a good thing to have in the diet anyway, and they taste really good. So thank you so much everyone for sticking around. We did go 1 or 2 minutes over time, but thank you, Elena. It was a real masterclass, as someone said, on omega-3, and really appreciate it because this is a very science heavy topic where it's not necessarily the one that can be as easy for people who are not kind of familiar with the literature to just pick up. You made it super easy to digest and really useful for healthcare professionals and general people who are listening as well. So I'm really happy with the fact that we covered this topic finally. So yeah, some lovely comments saying thank you so much for a brilliant presentation. Thank you so much. Very useful discussion. Brilliant. Thank you so much. As a vegan and passionate about nutrition, I was looking forward to it and wasn't disappointed. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Excellent. Super. So we'll see everyone in a couple of weeks. Please do come. We're going to be discussing everything about fatigue. I mean, I think this is something that affects so many people, feeling fatigued, feeling tired, and not just tired, fatigued. It's something so many of us can experience, and so many patients are struggling with, particularly in the wake of long COVID and so many other things, especially if you're living with comorbidities or chronic illness. So please come along to that and support. And I'll see you in a couple of weeks' time. Good night, everyone. And thanks again, Elena.
Thanks very much for listening. And thank you. And thanks, Rohini. Thank you.